Jay here for Stretford, Paddock, and this is the paper talk. And as you can see, I'm outside Old Trafford, and despite it looking like it was going to be sunny today, it actually started raining, so I've got my parka on as usual. Now, it's the morning after the night before, and it was a good night eventually. United going past Copenhagen in the Europa League 1-0 thanks to a Bruno Fernandes penalty, although it did take extra time. Now, as you'd expect, a lot of the quotes this morning around Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's reaction to that victory and how Bruno Fernandes' penalty saved the day. And he's been talking about Bruno Fernandes' penalty and his penalty technique, because we know that Fernandes likes to do that little hop, that puts my nerves on complete edges. But he didn't do it last night. He just took a more sort of standard penalty, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was talking about that. He said he knows that keepers will wait for him to do the jump. He practices both of them, and he practices both sides, so he's got them sorted. Better than I was anyway. Now, we spoke to Ryan Hopper, the coach, a few weeks ago, if you remember, on Howson's Brew, and he was talking about how Bruno Fernandes during the lockdown had been practicing, had been, coming down to his facility to train, and how he mixed up his penalties, how he took different ones, and sometimes he did the hop, sometimes he didn't. He was very much sort of varying it. And you can see that in his penalties, because his record is phenomenal. What is it? Is it something like 27 out of 28? I forget. I think last night was United's 21st penalty of the season or something like that, which sent the anti-United brigade into meltdown at the amount of penalties we had. But as I always say, this is the time when penalties are fairer than ever. I'm not saying they're all fair, but they're fairer than they've ever been because of VAR. So you're getting them studied, you're getting them looked at properly, and for me, it was a penalty. Anthony Martial got pulled last night on his shoulder. I don't know what people are moaning about. So United through to the semi-final of the Europa League, where will face either Sevilla or Wolves. We've not played Wolves for a little while, have we? I think how many times we've played Wolves now this season, I've lost count. And obviously with Sevilla, we've got a little bit of unfinished business there, because it wasn't that long ago, was it 2 years ago that we played them here, and they knocked us out of the Champions League under Jose Mourinho, and that was almost the beginning of the end of Jose Mourinho's reign. So it'll be interesting to see who we get. Either one of those teams, good teams. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer spoke about Sevilla. I think he said that when he was at Molde, they knocked him out of the Europa, so he's got a little bit of a point to prove against them. And we know that we've had a few games with Wolves. It's always been relatively evenly matched when we play Wolves. So we'll wait and see. Neither of those are an easy tie, but United through to the last four of the Europa League. That's the third semi-final that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's reached this season, which is a decent season. But listen, we're Manchester United. We're not here to make semi-finals. We're here to win trophies, and Ole will want to finish the season with a trophy, and we're a step closer to that. And one of the reasons we're a step closer to that is thanks to Juan Mata, who came on last night and sort of had a big influence on the game. A lot of people were scratching their heads when they saw Juan Mata coming on, especially when you saw Mason Greenwood going off. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was rightly full of praise for the diminutive Spaniard. He said, you saw when he came on, he's so composed, calm. He can pick a pass. He's such a great influence in the dressing room. I can just commend him for his professionalism. Of course, he's disappointed he has not played more. No one's ever questioned Juan Mata's professionalism. He's one of those sort of characters that you see, he's likeable, he does a lot for charity, he's always worked hard, he always does the job that you ask him to do, regardless of where he's played. When he first came to the club, he was at Chelsea, he was more of a sort of a number 10 type of player. He's been played on the wing, he's been played in midfield, and he's always done a great job for Manchester United. He's always given his all. And yes, his legs may be catching up with him a little bit as he ages. And yes, he hasn't got the pace of the likes of Rashford, Martial and Greenwood, but he's an extremely intelligent player, and he still has something to offer Manchester United this season. And he proved that last night with a very good performance when he came on against Copenhagen and helped Manchester United get over the line and get through to that semi-final. Now, most of the talk when it comes to Manchester United, regardless of whether we played last night or not, is going to be centred around Jadon Sancho, and today's no different. Now, yesterday afternoon, everyone went into a little bit of a meltdown because the Dortmund sporting director, Michael Zorc, who isn't afraid to make statements, he came out and said that he felt that he came out with a statement, and said that we plan with Jadon Sancho. He'll play for us next season. The decision is final. I think that answers all of the questions, because obviously he'd been answering a lot of questions, been getting asked a lot of questions about Jadon Sancho. Now, it transpires that people were sort of questioning what he said, because he said about Jadon Sancho signing a new deal. Now, that doesn't mean that Jadon Sancho's just signed a new deal, because he hasn't. Jadon Sancho signed a new deal last season that took him up to, I think it was an extension that took him up to 2023 on his contract, and that was what the sporting director of Dortmund was alluding to, the fact that Jadon Sancho has 3 years left on his deal rather than 2. Now, everyone was sort of questioning that, saying, oh, Does that mean that Dortmund aren't going to sell? Does that mean that... But we've always known that. They've always known that. That's always been the situation. So this doesn't really change anything. Now, one of the issues that apparently that's been with Manchester United in these negotiations is who's taking part in the negotiations, because it hasn't just been a representative of Manchester United speaking to a representative of Dortmund. There's intermediaries involved. And I think that's been a part of the problem. I think there's Evening Standard have been reporting that relations between Dortmund and United are said to be very cordial, despite a clear disparity over their respective values of Sancho. Dortmund wanting 120 million, United wanting to pay closer to 80 million. But there seems to be a problem because you've got intermediaries dealing with that. Old Trafford officials, this is Evening Standard again, were surprised when instructed to conduct negotiations through Sancho's agent, Emeka Obase. Dortmund have also involved Marco Liechtensteiner as an intermediary, but United's main dealings have been with Obase. United are understood to be frustrated with the pace of negotiations, particularly Dortmund's insistence on this transfer being agreed by August the 10th. Now, obviously, that transfer deadline that Dortmund set, which was just an arbitrary date that they came up with, because, you know, supposedly it's so they could sort of focus on who was playing for them and who was going to be training with them. And obviously we know that Jadon Sancho is now training with them. But I've never put much weight in that, and I don't think anyone else has, because we know that, listen, if Manchester United were to come up with the money after August the 10th, I'm not sure. I don't think Dortmund are going to say, well, you've missed the deadline, so no, we're not going to take £120 million off you. I think that was a bit of a nonsense. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. It's still going to rumble on, and a little twist in the tail came from Daniel Harris last night. Now, I know Daniel Harris. He's a reliable journalist. I've met him a couple of times. He writes for The Guardian. He's not really a transfer journalist, and he always admits that. He wears his heart on his sleeve with that. He does sort of more sort of opinion pieces and things like that. But he's claimed that Jadon Sancho will submit a transfer request in order to force his move to Manchester United. It's Daniel Harris, who writes for Guardian, saying that Jadon Sancho will actually go and hand in a formal transfer request to try and force Dortmund's hand, force through a move. Now, we'll have to wait and see whether that happens. Like I said, Daniel Harris is someone I think is quite reliable, so I do take what he says quite seriously, but we'll have to see whether Jadon Sancho is willing to do that, because it obviously puts him in a bit of a position where if he goes in and hands in a transfer request, he could upset the Dortmund fans, he could alienate himself from his current club, and it may backfire, because if Manchester United don't pay the money, Dortmund dig their heels in, then Jadon Sancho is going to still be at Dortmund at a club where he's handed in a transfer request. Now, United have sort of had this kind of thing before. We had it in a roundabout fashion with Bruno Fernandes. There were reports that Bruno Fernandes had told Sporting Lisbon that he didn't want to play for them anymore, that he wanted to leave, and that, I don't know whether it was a formal transfer request, it was more of him saying, listen, I want this deal to happen, you need to make it happen, or I'm not going to be happy. That was in January, of course, just before he did move on. We also know that Odi Nagalo, he had to go and I think knock on doors, literally knock on someone's door at his club, to try and force for a move, to let them know, listen, Manchester United are in for me, I want to go, make the deal happen. So it's not the first time that Manchester United have relied on players to try and help the deal get over the line, but, you know, it is a flawed sort of tactic, and we'll have to see whether it works and whether it even happens, of course. Now, the main man that everyone wants to see when it comes to transfers is, of course, Fabrizio Romano. Now, he said yesterday, he tweeted, Sancho situation, Borussia Dortmund made it very clear by their side. They're asking for €120 million with add-ons, or Jadon Sancho will not leave this summer. Borussia Dortmund convinced he can stay one more year, as Zorc said today. So that's the extra year that we were talking about. It wasn't a contract extension that's just been signed. It was one previously. So, Romano goes on to add, the quote from Zorc is, we have already extended his contract 1 year ago until June 2023. So there you have it. There's a contract extension there that was signed last year. That takes him up to June 2023. That makes Dortmund's position perhaps a little bit more stable, or a little bit more difficult from Manchester United point of view than many of us suspected. We've been here before with these transfers. We were here last summer. We saw it with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, where the sort of negotiations rumbled on for a few weeks, and then in the end, Manchester United more or less ended up paying exactly what Crystal Palace wanted. And it was the same with Leicester City. The negotiations went on for a few weeks, and then what happened? We ended up paying more or less exactly what Leicester City wanted for Harry Maguire. So it wouldn't surprise me if Manchester United did end up paying more or less what Dortmund wanted, and most of it up front as well, rather than this staggered deal that's been mooted, where Manchester United are going to pay in instalments £60 million here, £30 million here, or whatever it is. It may well be that Manchester United have to come up with a lot of the money up front. The big point that Manchester United are making is, with the pandemic, with no fans, with a little bit less revenue, Manchester United don't have as much money up front a sort of an idea that I'm not buying into. We know how much money this club makes. We know how much money the owners take out of the club as well. There's money for transfers, and Jadon Sancho is obviously Manchester United's main target. So there you have it. It's beginning to clear up a little bit here in Manchester. Just spitting, but there are some clouds clearing and a bit of sunshine on the horizon. We'll have to wait and see whether the Jadon Sancho transfer is on the horizon. It may well rumble on, as we've told you. He may well have to put in a transfer request. We'll see if that one happens. But at the moment, Manchester United, the big story from last night, the quotes are Manchester United, obviously, through to the semi-final of the Europa League. Can we get some silverware this season to top off what would be a good season for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Manchester United? I've been Jay. This has been the Paper Talk. We'll have loads more content coming up as usual. We'll have me and Ronaldo sitting down with the Tier 1 journalist for the Tier 1 podcast, Tier 1 Transfer podcast later on today. We'll also have all the stuff looking ahead to the next game, of course, that semi-final against either Sevilla or Wolves. We'll have the previews, we'll have the watch-along and the post-match reaction when it happens. We've also got the fan cams last night, so make sure you check them out. Andy Tate, Adam McCullough, Joe and all the gang giving their reaction to United's 1-0 win over FC Copenhagen. I've been Jay. Don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.